the largest global nonprofit standard certification board dedicated to innovation and innovation management with a global network of over 16,000 members, spanning 116 countries and 20,000 individual certifications, and more than 1,500 organization certifications issued. Jimmy is the preeminent thought leader in driving innovation within organizations and equipping individuals with skill sets to innovate successfully. Jimmy has published the Global Innovation Science Handbook and is sponsoring the International Journal of Innovation and Science. After merging with the International Association of Innovation Professionals, Jimmy became the main innovation certification organization in the world, now driving global ISO innovation management standards. Jimmy is driving development of AI tools to help companies do bigger and bolder innovations faster and cheaper through leveraging innovation ecosystems. Jimmy is leading 5 centers of excellence across high growth sectors and has established within the Dubai Government Excellence Program the Global Council of Innovative Organizations. Jimmy has created Jimmy Think Tank, a weekly forum that brings together some of the world's best speakers to discuss innovation, leading to the creation of the Jimmy Speakers Bureau. Jimmy is democratizing innovation globally through a network of over 32 partners who deliver Jimmy offerings in their respective countries, more than 200 corporate partners, and over 100 universities and numerous governments that utilize Jimmy's methodology.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Now, as we do every week, we'll share with you, before we move into the speech, the bio of the speaker. And actually, we're excited to have you join another very interesting session. Of course, the objective is always to spotlight bold innovators, bold practitioners who are driving meaningful progress in energy transition. Today, actually, we're happy to welcome someone that is not stranger to innovation, not stranger to IXL or Jimmy community. Actually, he is an alumni to one of our premier flagship consulting competitions, Innovation Olympics. Ephraim, or Epps, how we name him, Labrador. He's the venture principal at 18082 Energy Ventures. It's a pioneering venture studio accelerating the global energy transition, of course, by building and scaling startups that have this aim of decentralizing energy systems. Here, Epps, of course, leads teams across the full ventures life cycle. He guides early stage energy startups from concept stage to actually seed stage readiness. He has worked on 6 venture builds. 2 of them have already secured funding, with another one close behind. He will share more, I believe. And of course, his work spans beyond infrastructure. He's focused on building energy ventures that are all about, or rethink how value is created, how value is captured, how that is shared across the energy ecosystem. And of course, there's always an emphasis on participation, access, and even justice in the energy transition, which is quite aligned with what we're doing. And of course, before stepping into the world of venture building, Epps built a diverse career, I would say. He held roles at Schneider Electric, Aboitiz Power, Globe Telecom, First Gen Corporation, Meralco, and others, always contributing to everything from centralized grid systems to innovation strategy and also marketing. That's why we're very happy to have you here. Epps, I believe this session promises to bring fresh insights, especially in terms of how startups are leading the charge in this democratization of energy transition, especially in emerging markets. Thank you for joining us, and we're all ears to hear your presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your introduction, Gola. No? Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. I mean, it was 7 years ago when I joined the IXL Olympics. I became Jimmy certified. Honestly, I can say that the frameworks, the consulting training, the competition, the mindset that I gained from Jimmy shaped the way I work as a venture principal. No? It helped me every single day. No? So I'm eternally grateful to Jimmy. Excited to be here. Excited to meet all of you in this growing community. No? So yeah. Let me start my presentation. Go to the next slide, right? Let me start my presentation with a quote from one of my favorite artists, like Freddie Mercury, right? The bigger, the better in everything, right? So the question is it really? I mean, is bigger always better, right? I know it's difficult to gauge now, but I'm physically small, so I need to argue otherwise. But at least in the context of energy transition, this is what most people believe, right? Like when we think about energy transition, we often picture about massive renewable power plants, no? Taking over the grid. So in the Philippines alone, like if you go to the next slide, in the Philippines alone, you'll hear announcements of megawatts, gigawatts of capacity being built, big solar farms, big wind farms, big infrastructure, and that includes our parent company, Aboitiz Power. No? And this is great. This is crucial in our energy transition. But in the next slide, if you look at the players in the ecosystem, they also love big, right? They cherish big. Financing, it's structured for large projects with solid off-takers, predictable risk. Insurance, the same. The bigger, the better for them. OEMs, EPCs, and even owners, they prefer massive projects. They can take advantage of the economies of scale. But here's the problem. There's a growing set of customers being left behind by this system. Now, if you go to the next slide, like if you build a system around big, you end up ignoring anything small, right? And this is the state of the edge of our energy system, right? We're talking about farmers that still uses diesel pumps despite abundant sun. We're talking about a homeowner or an SME owner with large electricity bills, volatile electricity costs, right? And really just can't do anything about it. Like whatever the utility says, they're just going to take it up, right? And the problem really is the kilowatts, right? Like kilowatts, kilowatt hours. If you hear that, whether you're an OEM provider, you're a financier, or even a developer, it's often dismissed. It's often deprioritized, right? And if you go to the next slide, right? That's the reason why Aboitiz Power, one of the already largest power companies in the Philippines, built a venture studio to go after these edges, to go after the decentralization of energy. We believe decentralization of energy is going to be one of the pillars of energy transition. We not only see the opportunity, but we're seeing the risk also that it poses to our existing power generation and power distribution business. So we built 1882 Energy Ventures, a venture studio that creates startups for more sustainable homes, businesses, mobility, and networks. And as I mentioned by Viola earlier, we're aiming to accelerate this energy transition by decentralizing our energy systems. Because if you look at the other or the flip side of this, like if we don't do any actions, if you go to the next slide, underserved markets will stay underserved, right? Schools, SMEs, all of these low load factors businesses, they will continue to be passed over by these large utility companies. They will be continue to be deprioritized, and it means consistent or persistent energy poverty, consistent rising electricity cost for a large portion of our population, particularly here in our emerging markets. No? Moreover, systems gets more fragile, right? Like especially for place yourselves in our position, like an archipelagic country like the Philippines, wherein we have 7,000 islands, 7,000 plus islands, right? Considering the climate risks, considering the cybersecurity risk, and the difficulty of connecting everything to the grid, it's becoming more and more difficult to maintain our system, the reliability of our system, and to localize blackouts, for example. More so of providing energy access to different types of people. But aside from that, as mentioned earlier, right, like we see a huge opportunity here to be able to engage decentralized energy systems. We basically go beyond just becoming an infrastructure provider, right? And we basically gain advantage towards new revenue streams like virtual power plants or DR orchestration. So, and maybe like 11882. Viola said introduce us as 182. It's 1882. And maybe you may ask why 1882. If you go to the next slide, because 1882 is the year where the world's first centralized power station was lit up in Menlo Park in New York City, right? So we take inspiration from this date as we try to transform, reinvent this decades, actually not decades, right? This centuries old system of centralized grid, right? As I mentioned here, our role in this energy transition is by decentralizing our energy system. Now, if you go to the next slide, if you think about like the centralization of energy, you maybe just thinking about like rooftop solar, maybe multiple IoTs, for example, microgrids, right? Like that's something that you'll be able to think about immediately. Microgrids, maybe EVs, maybe energy management. But this technology is just the tip of the iceberg, right? If we go to the next slide, decentralization, we believe, is deeper. It's not just technical, it's institutional, right? And in emerging markets in the Philippines, like the Philippines, the barriers are more pronounced. So what we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with invisibility of data, fragmented systems, engineers still using 1960s, 1970s equipment with manual processes, data logs, record logs, that's like stored somewhere in the basement. And before we even talk about like AI or smart grids, this is something that we need to fix in an emerging and developing market. We also deal with financing gaps, right? Caused by a lack of risk visibility in fragmented markets. So this is the challenge, particularly if you go lower and lower. As I mentioned earlier, if it's large, it's going to be like financiers already have a structure for that. But if you go smaller and smaller in terms of scale, it's becoming more and more difficult to have a risk visibility towards those. And if you look at it, there's a decision making mismatch, right? Where communities and smaller actors can participate. Typically, whatever the centralized grid or whatever the utility says, it's going to be a top-down approach, right? So there's a lot of people that's missing the transition, that's missing becoming more involved in the energy transition, and that's what we need to do. What we need to deal, no? And because of that, we believe decentralization isn't just about using new technologies. It's about building a new ecosystem, an ecosystem of players that can translate and scale towards the small scale opportunities. It's about a new mindset and new ways of working. That's why in our methodology of venture building, we build problem first, not tech first, right? So we don't chase like unproven, for example, unproven technologies. We don't just chase the trends. We view that as a tool for us, but essentially we start with the problem. I mean, it's very Jimmy, right? Like this is what's being taught in Jimmy. Start with the problem, right? But it's very critical, particularly in our context, no? So we believe a lot of technology already exists. We believe it's commercially viable already. What's missing right now are the tools to unlock that business model to be able to simplify those things. And that's what venture building allows us to do. It lets us experiment where traditional tools fail. And again, remember, we're part of a very sort of like risk-averse company where we have huge businesses in power generation and power distribution. So venture building or creating a company separate from that group allows us to experiment and to iterate very, very quickly. It lets us use our assets to shape the future and not just to react to it, right? And I think like that's an opportunity for an emerging market also like the Philippines. So of course we have a lot of disadvantages, but our advantage is we can learn from the mistakes of a more advanced country. For example, we're learning why that blackout happened in Spain, for example. We're learning towards what's the systems available for a decentralized, a more mature decentralized energy market like Australia, right? So we can course correct early and we can build better systems from the ground up. And because of this approach, if you look at what we're trying to achieve, the next slide, we don't just want to install 1 million rooftop solar projects or put 1 million EVs on the road, right? Of course, those are good, but we want more than that. Like what we wanted to do is we wanted to enable communities. What we wanted to do is we wanted to empower them. What we wanted to do is we wanted to improve energy access. So those are our key outcomes that we wanted to do. Not just sell more, but ensure there's sufficient reliability and affordability is present out there. We also wanted to reduce or enhance energy system efficiency. Again, it's not about like being able to use new technology. It's about understanding the bottlenecks, the friction points across the value chain, and basically trying to remove those so that you'll be able to build smarter and adaptive, efficient networks. And of course, as a venture studio, one of our key outcomes or top outcomes is going to be able to create sustainable new businesses for the group. No? If you look at the current segments of 1882 Energy Ventures right now, the first one is residential energy. And why is that? Because residential, like the energy in the Philippines right now, the electricity price in the Philippines right now is one of the highest across Southeast Asia. On the other hand, we have a growing middle class. Our policy is starting to shift in our favor. And the thing is, the market is largely untapped. So we have one venture that is focusing on this, on taking advantage of this residential energy solutions. The second one is SME, right? Like in terms of the level of pain point, they're the ones who suffer deeply from the expensive and unreliable power sources of power. No, yes, they will try their best to pass everything, like all of this increasing cost of energy to their customers, but it greatly reduces their competitive advantage. And the thing is, in Southeast Asia, not only in the Philippines but in Southeast Asia, SMEs are massive, right? We're essentially being run by thousands, or sorry, millions of SMEs in Southeast Asia, and this is constantly growing as we're seeing more and more markets being developed. The third market that we're focusing on is e-mobility. We believe this will be one of the most dynamic transitions, and particularly in the Philippines, like Philippines is trying to catch up to its neighboring countries. But our goal is to enable it properly so that we'll be able to take advantage of this growing and dynamic space from the country. So those are our focus area, and those are like the reason why we're essentially using venture building as a tool to take advantage of the decentralization of energy. Maybe to be able to deep dive, I wanted to share our actual ventures or our portfolio of ventures. As mentioned by Viola earlier, we currently have now 6 running ventures. 2 of those are already in seed. One of those are actually near Series A already. And I'm going to share just 3 ventures, no, 3 ventures, and I'm going to share the insights that we are able to uncover, particularly here in the Philippines or in our current market. No. So the first one is, and this is the one nearest towards Series A, Solviva. Solviva is focused only on residential customers, right? Like if you look at like multiple exemplars out there, you're going to be able to see like a startup or a company that's focused on multiple type of segments. But that's the difference of approach that we're trying to do here, where we're actually just focused on residential rooftop solar. We have built our operations to be able to take advantage of that space. And right now we have a rent-to-own model that's growing exponentially, no, for the past few months. We've just started a rent-to-own model last January, and constantly we're seeing more and more traction out of that, such that we are highly convicted that we'll be able to raise Series A soon. So one of the key insights that we've explored is that like if you look at it, like your initial reaction, if you want to enter in the Philippine market, in a developing or an emerging market, it's more of like, hey, I wanted to sell my solar panels at the lowest cost or lowest price possible, right? But one of the key insight is that it's not just affordability that's the challenge, right? It's actually trust. Like the current system right now is broken by trust, right? If you, for example, ask in Facebook groups that you wanted to install a rooftop solar, you're going to be bombarded. Like 20 different type of developers or installers are going to message you, DM you, and say, hey, I wanted to get to know more about your system. And customers right now, like homeowners, who, mind you, have like different type of priorities, will be bombarded and will not push through with their decision process, no, in installing rooftop solar. So the key here, the key message here is not like we don't need to like build like an AI driven, for example, AI driven personalized approach or understanding of the customers. It's simply as being able to build the best customer experience out there, right? And that's a real differentiating factor for us, at least last year when we launched this. No? And then the next step or the next bottleneck that we're seeing is, again, the affordability. So high upfront cost. That's the reason why we've shared or launched the rent-to-own offer last January. Now, if we go through like a residential space as or wearing the hat of a utility or a power distribution or power generation company, we're going to be able to see it as like small, right? Like it's going to be in kilowatts. But if you look at the total market opportunity, particularly in the Philippines, the market size is large, and we have identified like active households, or like our serviceable obtainable market as 1.6 million households, and currently right now it's less than 2%. So it's a largely untapped market that we will not be able to uncover if we haven't implemented a venture building lens, no, towards this space. So again, it's untapped, fast growing, yeah. At the end of the day, Solviva is also leveraging the operational edge and the brand recognition of Aboitiz Tower. So that also helps build the trust and basically convert different customers. So this is quite exciting for us. So the next one is a battery swapping infrastructure. So you may heard, for example, that Gogoro, for example, is actually pulling out the Philippines. The first battery swapping infrastructure that have tried the Philippine market is actually pulling out. Now, why are we entering into that space? Right. So from our analysis and from our deep dive towards using our venture build methodology, what we have unlocked is that Gogoro essentially have pursued a market that is not yet ready, right? So they've pursued the consumer or customer market segment, which basically resulted to like hobbyists, like their market became so small that it's only just hobbyists because their price point is too high. So one of our key insights here is that rather than go wide, for example, and serve different or multiple type of segments, we just go deep and basically focus on the things or a specific segment that needs a strong electric vehicle and a lower total cost of ownership. So we're looking at deliveries and logistics as our first segment here. No, and fleets based on our interviews, based on our experiments and tests, wants electrification. It's a no-brainer for them, right? But they can't manage the downtime. They can't just like charge during the night or even during the day and wait for that to be charged essentially. So that's the reason why we attack this lens as a battery swap station. So we're planning to launch this venture. We're already on our way towards pilot stage by Q4 2025. And as you can see in terms of the opportunity, it's going to be a large opportunity, particularly in the Philippines, as we constantly see an increase in growth for deliveries and logistics. Now on the next one, so this is our latest build. It hasn't been launched yet. It hasn't even reached seed stage yet. No? It's one of our pre-seed ventures. But what we have seen earlier, I've talked about, for example, financing and the challenges of financiers, for example, in dealing with small scale, right? Because currently, right now, financiers are structured to be able to take advantage of 10 large projects, for example, 10, 100 megawatts, 150 megawatts, 200 megawatts of projects. The challenge is if we're talking about thousands of 1 megawatt or even 500 kilowatt of projects. So there's a massive financing gap that we're seeing right now. And the thing is, there's demand out there. Like there's a lot of SMEs out there that are looking to install rooftop solar, but can't do so because of the high upfront cost. And that's the reason why we've built Open Power. No? So that's for the developer side. For the investor side, they're interested. Like there's a lot of investors looking at investing in the Philippines, particularly for sustainable projects, more so for SME rooftop solar projects, but they don't have transparency on the risk. Right? They don't know how they will be able to benchmark the risk. There's a lot of like high perceived risk that they're seeing for the SME market here in the Philippines. So Open Power is our bridge to be able to connect or to basically funnel this capital that's out there, sustainable capital that is out there, towards these developers. But during our investigations, when we used our venture building lens here, the further insight that we're seeing out there is that developers are not ready to transform their business. So for context, right, they're so used to cash-based transactions, chasing customers, for example, and basically just getting the cash upfront. So the evaluation of the risk for them is non-existent. Like they're not trained or they're not structured to be able to evaluate the credit risk of their customers. So Open Power goes beyond financing and goes towards enablement of these different developers to help them not only become sort of like a financing agent, but to help them automate their current operations so that they can pursue this different type of business model that they're not used to do. So that's Open Power. As you can see across this SME or across small and medium enterprises in the region, there's around 74 billion USD of RTS market opportunity. on the other hand, there's billions of capital that sit idle due to friction points in basically understanding the risk of deploying in small scale energy projects. So those are the three ventures that we've built, no? And we have like two or three more that we're trying to build now. But again, as you can see, there's no like the first step for us is not to really like explore like a specific technology, right? It's really like to understand what are the friction points out there and why are these customers not adopting whether an electric vehicle, for example, or whether rooftop solar, right? Okay, so how we work how we work is as important as what we do, right? If you click the animation, right? So what we're doing right now is we're building 100 million USD business with purpose of and agility. And in terms of our values, it's important to us that how we work is basically aligned to the values that we have, right? So just very quickly, the five values that we have: the anti-fragility. So we don't aim for perfection, we aim for progress. Again, this is something that you can't do if you're sitting inside the core, right? So as a venture studio, as a venture builder, we basically are comfortable with uncertainty and basically not striving for perfection. We're actually looking at failure not as like a requirement, but as a valuable resource tool for us. So across the 6 venture builds that we have done, we have already killed, I think, 3 or 4 ventures already. So in like our less than 2 years of existence, that's the amount of ventures that we have killed already, because we're comfortable with that uncertainty, with that level of uncertainty. So integrity, again, in a fast-moving, high-stakes environment like venture building, trust is about everything. Calculated risk. We're not going in there and basically starting from zero, right? Like, and again, using that Jimmy framework, right? You need to be able to understand where you want to start. And that's critical for us. Like where do we start? How do we start this? It's going to be critical for us because we're also taking calculated risk. We can't go out there blindly, and I think this is an advantage of a venture studio compared to a startup in the web. So openness and speaking up, I think that's self-explanatory, and ownership and accountability as well. So the challenge I think with most of like corporate employees or corporate personnel is that they're always being told what they need to do, right? But as part of the venture studio, it's so critical for us to be able to take ownership and basically just solve the problems. And so it goes beyond your job description essentially, and that's the mindset that we're implementing across from the venture principal towards the associate ventures and towards the whole organization. So on the next slide, just wanted to this is my last slide. So just wanted to emphasize that the 3 ventures that we have, it's not going to take long if you don't have a great founder, right? If you don't have a great set of founders. So just wanted to emphasize the importance of a different set of mindset that's needed for us to take advantage of the decentralization of energy, right? Because founders will be able to turn complexity into action. So we really need someone with bias towards action. We need someone that has that empathy, because again, we're essentially like challenging the decades-old, in a way, in their view, working system, right? And we're chasing essentially a new value pool. So we need someone with that empathy that will be able to start at the scratch of the marginal space, with lower margins, for example, and basically take that up and scale that up. And lastly, that's an unreasonable ambition, right? Everything in climate infrastructure and energy infrastructure, it will take time. And again, in a space where incumbents protect the center, we need someone who's willing to rebuild from the edges. I know Viola said that we can plug, but we want to minimize the plug. But if you know someone, because this is so critical to the success of the venture studio, if you know someone who wants to build startups, decentralized, that aims to accelerate decentralized energy, wants to move to the Philippines or at least explore the Philippines and the ASEAN market, definitely we need. So I'll be stopping here. I wanted to make it like short because I wanted to like really converse with everyone. I can answer. I know I haven't like provided very deep level of data, but I just wanted to have conversation with everyone in the audience right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Epps. Now, as usual, we will move to the Q&A, but before we go there, Vane, is there any video that we are sharing today
Yes.
for CIP? Okay, let's share that video and then we move to the Q&A. Thank you, Epps.
Yeah.
If you are a professional aiming to learn about idea generation and implementation tools to create breakthrough innovations, the Certified Innovation Professional Program is for you. This 8-week hands-on course is designed for professionals who want to master innovation. You'll gain a deep understanding of what innovation really is, learn the tools and techniques to apply it, and use a proven step-by-step process to bring ideas to commercialization. With expert mentor guidance, you'll work on a real-world challenge so you're not just learning concepts, you're applying them from day one. You'll explore how to set the right innovation intent, discover opportunity insights, generate new business concepts, reverse engineer and validate ideas, build a compelling business case, develop a product from idea to commercialization. You'll look at future trends, organize ideas into an opportunity map, define where your organization should play and where it shouldn't, and develop concepts that are worth investing in. The course is facilitated by Dr. Hitendra Patel, founder and CEO of the JIM Institute. He's consulted over 1,000 companies around the world, helping executive teams build innovation capabilities and unlock 10x growth.
It doesn't dwell so much on what you have to do, but how to make innovation real. So in there is, where's your blue ocean? Where are you going to win in the future? Ron talked about the platforms and the focus areas for a company. In there, embedded in there is what are the best ideas in the world? And those ideas would come from the future, from trends, or the past, or the present, or competitors, or adjacencies. That's there too.
Whether you're launching a new product, solving a customer problem, or shaping a strategy, CIP gives you the confidence, tools, and process to make innovation real.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vanessa. Now, just to move to the Q&A, a lot of questions, Epps. Actually, I want to start in a bit of a different manner. So I read in your slides, you were saying we start with the problems, we don't start with the shiny technologies or the trends, and I really like that quote. However, I still want to ask you, so what do you believe are those key trends that you foresee to disrupt the future, especially considering those focus areas or markets that you are tackling, but even beyond?
So there's again using the problem lens and then just trying to answer those key trends, right? Like so the problems that we're facing right now, as I mentioned earlier, are data fragmentation, data visibility. So there are different trends right now, like multiple IoT systems that you'll be able to connect that if you have the proper platform that will give you more data, for example. So again, I think it's essentially like work side by side, right? Like if you look at our problem right now, that's one, and then the solution there, or the trends that we're seeing there, is like more and more IoT devices are being integrated, right? Like inverter brands, for example, are coming in with a solar panel level type of monitoring systems, for example. I mean, that will help. That will help us understand what's really happening out there. And I think that's going to be a crucial trend for us, particularly in the decentralization of energy. How will we make IoT systems, connections with these different devices become more affordable, become more seamless for everyone? So that's one key trend that we're looking at. We really can't go like if we're talking about trends, we really can't like not say artificial intelligence, right? Because we're seeing more and more startups, because how we do is like we also look at like exemplars, and we're seeing more and more startups that's trying to take advantage of the space by building different types of AI-driven technologies, right? And I see here like a question from Vanessa, right? Like, how do you manage or understand the risk, right? So you basically create a model that will help you understand the risk. But I think the difference here is that, again, for any AI-driven type of technology, the input was going to be key, right? And in our case, what's critical for us is to be able to first solve that layer, solve that data visibility, solve that connection to different multiple points, so that we'll be able to take advantage of this future technologies, right? So those are like just two trends that I just wanted to say, because we're seeing more and more of those, particularly in our exemplar research, which I think needs to be faced, to be honest, to be transparent, because we need to first solve that missing layer right now, which is data visibility.
And actually, exactly on what you mentioned, Epps, how were you able to prioritize those focus areas, right? And what in the future, which area do you believe will unlock the most transformational change? So is it the residential, or is it the SMEs? Is it e-mobility? How do you foresee the role of AI playing a role there, since you mentioned it?
Yeah. So first of all, the reason why we've looked at those focus areas is because it's highly untapped right now. Like no incumbents out there are really focusing on trying to solve this different focus areas. No, I think that's more particularly for residential and SMEs. Like the way that the system is working right now, for example, residential are being served by the utilities, by the distribution utilities. Essentially, that's a status quo that has been like for the longest time, for 30, 40 years. It's the same, right? And no one's like looking actively on like, hey, how can we like make a different type of relationships with these residential customers beyond just them sending their payments towards their bill, or at least calling you when their lights are off, right? So that's something that like I think both on data visibility, connections, or understanding what's happening out there, and even AI driven solutions, is going to be large for us. There's no like in terms of quantifying those three focus areas, I think we're looking at them quite differently. Like you need to wear different lenses, because there's different type or sets of opportunities there, right? Like residential, we're able to take advantage of the volume. Like there's really a lot of residential players out there, and they are like hungry for innovation. Because again, as I mentioned, 30 to 40 years is the same. They just complain and that's it. That's the end of it. Right? So they're really hungry for innovation. I haven't mentioned it, but one of our portfolio companies right now that's near seed stage is trying to attack that, right? Like how can we aggregate those residential users to give them a choice, no? To give them a choice where to procure their energy, for example. So that's huge for us. SMEs for us, I think it's in a way it's massive. Like if you look at it regionally, right? It's a massive opportunity to tackle. But there's a lot of like multiple friction points that needs to be solved. Like the number one friction point that we're seeing most of the time is the behavioral gap. Like so yes, we can, for example, explore AI, for example, to be able to solve that. But how do you solve someone who's an SME owner who basically don't look at internet, just goes to their business on site physically, and you need to be able to for you to be able to reach them, you need to go to that site. And they're set on their ways. Like I've been doing this business for 50 years. If this is even a business from my parents, for example, why do I need to change the things that I'm doing right now? Right. So that massive behavioral gap, even if they're feeling, for example, the pain of high electricity cost, I think it's a very, very interesting opportunity for us to solve, right? And very, very close to that is like it's not present in our focus areas, but energy efficiency, for example, is a classic example of behavioral gap, right? Like it's always there since like 10 years ago. Our government has initiatives to be able to like pursue energy efficiency. You've always been hearing this in the conferences, but the traction is really difficult, right? And because of the behavioral gap. So we're attacking it like step by step also, right? Rather than jumping towards like, hey, I can use let's explore using AI, for example. Again, we build small by removing the different bottlenecks that we're seeing, and that's what we're seeing for SMEs. Electric mobility. Sorry, I just went through all of my focus areas, but electric mobility, for example, is a dynamic space. We've just started even like the current ecosystem or the current players right now, nothing is set yet, right? Like of course you're seeing Ayala, for example, which I know is basically very, very close to Jimmy, but Ayala is like trying to do it vertically integrated, no? Which is interesting, but like there's nothing set. Like there's no one that has we think we believe has us able to like take advantage of that space. And again, in terms of like market adoption, we're just starting. Like we're not even like at the start of the curve. We're waiting for that for that to start. So it's an exciting opportunity for us, of course. And the thing is, you need the different lens to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. So in terms of the trends that we're seeing there, again, if you go back to like problem lens, so we're looking at the onset, like chargers, site scoping, for example, like where do I build my chargers? We're looking at financing, for example. And in all of these, it's all about like being able to gather the appropriate amount of data and being able to build the model so that you'll be able to utilize that data to basically tell, hey, this is where I can build my chargers. Hey, this is where I can understand the risk better so that I'll be able to provide loans, for example, for these.
Very, very, very comprehensive. Thank you for walking us through all those focus areas. Also, something you touched a bit upon Ayala, what they're doing in terms of vertical integration, and then you are coming from a Boyd's Power, right? Quite a large corporation as well. So, just curious. So, why did you take this other approach, right? So, why did a Boyd's Power commit to building a venture studio instead of just being more open, instead of investing into existing startups? And from your experience, what are some of the key learnings that the other corporations can adopt in here? And then after that, of course, with this energy transition, there is a blurred line, right? So energy decentralization is blurring the line between the consumer, the producer. So how should the business models evolve now so that we actually capture that value that is created? So anything that you can share around this space, and of course,
Sure.
make the comparison with the vertical integration of Ayala.
Yeah, like I mean, so the first answer to why like we just didn't build like a distributor companies because it's far from our expertise and capabilities, right? Like Avoidis Power like doesn't have that capability. I mean Ayala for the longest time have started I think 10 years ago trying to dabble into the space. They even have a manufacturing company, right? They have Easy Mobility, for example. So in a way they already have those capabilities. And when we're exploring this space, we've said that hey, we need to be creative. That's why we need a venture building lens for us to be able to take advantage of this space. Hence, that's the reason why rather than focus immediately towards like distributing, for example, four-wheel electric vehicles, which right now it's the demand is increasing, but there's still some challenges there. We basically focus on what's prevalent out, right? Like what's already prevalent out there, and what's again, and again, I don't want to sound like something that it's about problem risk. Like who's like the ones heavily impacted right now? Like who's the ones feeling the pain right now, such that if there's an opportunity for them to shift to EVs, they will shift to EVs, right? So, and that's where we have basically zoomed in on like deliveries, logistics players. So look at it in this in their context, right? Like they're riding their vehicles. This is their lifeline already. This is their livelihood already, right? So, they're on the road most of the times 12 hours a day, so that they'll be able to take advantage of additional income, and everything that they can save towards that type of operations after during that 12 hours is going to be beneficial for them. Again, this is where the strongest pain point is, and we followed that, right? And that I think is like a critical insight for us. So one of the critical insights also is like, hey, I'm here 12 hours a day. I want a vehicle that's comfortable, right? Like I want a vehicle that's so. If you're using, for example, like there's a significant difference if you're using an ICE vehicle, which is noisy, which is like in terms of like number of parts, it produces more vibrations towards a silent electric vehicle, right? And that's something that we have uncovered towards our venture building lens that we will not be able to uncover if you just said, hey, I just wanted to build a distribution facility. Hey, I just wanted to manufacture, for example, a vehicle, for example. So I think that was critical for us. And when we saw that and when we uncovered that, we said that, hey, there's multiple like very high uncertain opportunity areas that we said I think venture building is the right approach towards this, right? Like thinking about this differently is the right approach towards this. So in terms of your like how do you see like business models, like your question of how do you see business models evolving in the next few years? So uh, again, I'm a Jimmy, like I wanted to promote Jimmy also, like Jimmy frameworks. Like if you look at adjacencies, the framework of Jimmy about adjacencies. Fintech 10 years ago, for example, fintech companies have that difficulty of connecting to banks, for example. And then this company called Plaid in the US, based in the US, basically just started and said, hey, I'm just going to connect everything to the banks. You don't need to worry about that. I'll handle that for you, right? I'll handle everything that's connection. So what happened is Plaid exploded, fintech players exploded. So this is like an interesting opportunity for us, or interesting adjacency for us in the energy market, right? Like if I'm a rooftop solar installer right now, the way that I'll be able to produce proposals to my customers is I go to the site, I ask for their bill, I basically like if it's a large customer, I basically install a power quality or a current transformer device to be able to understand their load profile. But what if the different type of data is already present? Like there's someone who's already centralized this, right? So that I think is like a first level type of change in terms of business model. Like you earn from API access. And we've seen companies doing that already. Like we've seen eNode already doing that. And if you look at like their multiple use cases, because I think it will start there. It will start with like data visibility and data connection and control. If you start there, you're going to be able to unlock, for example, virtual power plants, which I think is a new model that we're trying to explore also. But again, we wanted to solve it on a phase by phase approach, right? We want to solve first this layer of data invisibility. So, but that's another business model that we can explore in the future. We've explored and piloted peer-to-peer energy already, wherein a house owner, for example, can sell electricity to others. And that's something that we're looking at. And that's a business model that I think will change drastically how it's being, like how electricity is being generated and sold in the Philippines at least. And this is not something new. Again, as I mentioned during during my presentation, Australia is already doing this, right? Like there's already peer-to-peer like business models that are being seen out there. So in a way, we're just copying that, but we're trying to like localize that, right? Like because before we even do peer-to-peer, we need to be able to have data connection, data control, and that's something that's the first data that we're trying to solve.
Thank you very much, Epps. And actually, I would like you to elaborate a bit more in terms of what are those countries, what are those nations, what are the venture building studios or competitors that you are benchmarking, or some great examples that you believe, I mean, there's great value and learnings to get from.
Yeah,
Are you
well,
benchmarking?
yeah, it varies, right? So in terms of like venture studios, I think one of the best well-run venture studio, particularly in this region, is Wavemaker Impact. Like when we're trying to like launch a business, it's also the same. Like we have Solviva, they have Helios, for example. So that's that I think is a venture studio that we're like okay, trying to explore, right? But when we look at like exemplars, for example, the first thing that we do is we understand the nuances of that market, right? Like India, for example, is a very rich I think country with great startups that we're trying to copy here in the Philippines. But what are the nuances, right? Like there's different set of like disposable income for India, different type of logistics, for example, that they're exploring there. Like there's a huge EV explosion in India. There's already a huge installed base of EVs in India. So if we're exploring, for example, at charging, because I think last year we're seeing a lot of like charge locator startups, for example, like a startup relocates chargers. So when we're exploring that, for example, and trying to copy that, I mean it's not really matched to us because we don't have that huge installed base of EVs already. That these charge locator startups are able to take advantage of in India. But that's the first step that we're doing. No? One of the like venture studios that's also like looking at or looking towards is like scientific, for example. So I think they're doing a lot of like great work. Another one, sorry, I just forgot the name, but we've also seen a venture studio wherein all of they do is like asset light energy startups or climate tech startups. That's interesting for us, right? Because initially the understanding that we have applied here is that most of the decentralized energy startups that we can build is heavy in capex, right? But there's I think it was Earth VC if I'm not mistaken. Or sorry, beyond Energize. Sorry, Energize. I think it was Energize. I'll just message you. But they basically came up with like different asset light startups, which in a way is much more scalable for us, right? Like if we implement asset light startups here in the country, it's much more easier to copy. It's much more easier to contextualize or localize here rather than like pursuing very deep tech, very technology driven type of venture studios. So those are like the different like venture studios that we're like looking up to. And in terms of like how we do our exemplars, again, we need to be able to understand the market, its difference from the Philippines before we even explore those the startups across inside those countries, for example.
No, definitely it's very important to get inspired, to follow fast, and of course to contextualize, to localize and then centralize as you mentioned. What is, because you mentioned a couple of times we're copying this, we're getting this kind of inspiration, so on and so forth. What is something that you have seen in Philippines, and this can be related to behavior, this can be related to research, this can be related to how you partner? What is something that you believe the other countries should copy from you that really gives you an edge in terms of building business, in terms of, especially in this space, right? That is quite challenging. And as you said, we have started this movement a long time ago.
Yeah. So if you look at just in the context of ASEAN, right? Because those are the markets that we're looking at. So Philippines and Singapore are the only liberalized energy or electricity market right now. And I think it's a key ingredient for us to explore different type of innovations. When I say liberalized, like um, a specific customer can decide where they want to get their supply, right? Like Vietnam, oh sorry, Indonesia, for example, Malaysia, for example. Right now, it's one utility, right? Philippines is special in a way wherein we're not yet fully liberalized. Like a residential owners, for example, can choose yet their supplier, for example. But I think we're getting there. No, we're slowly changing that, and I think in terms of like building startups, at least creating sandboxes, exploring this peer-to-peer type of business model, that's a crucial ingredient for us. No? Because technology is there. I think talent is there also in the ASEAN region. But like for every decentralized energy startups, it's going to be crucial that the regulations and the policies are in place also. Right? Like it limits your opportunity, like it limits your fields of play, it limits your opportunities. So
Thank you. Thank you very much, Epps. And actually, to the light of what you said. So, one thing in terms of the workforce transformations, what do you believe are those workforce transformations that will be required? Who will own the talent pipeline? Who will manage it? How do you see that? And then I have another question on the regulatory aspect and governments, but let's start with this. And then I'll leave that.
so okay, again, going back to problem lens, right? Like for me, someone that will be able to build a good set of like founders capability, someone that will be able to build a good pipeline of entrepreneurs is going to be critical to take advantage of the decentralized energy space. Because again, we're not selling kilowatt hours or kilowatts now, right? Like every type of startups in the decentralized energy space, the value pool is different, the business model is different. For open power, for example, we're essentially looking at the assets under management, and we earn from assets under management fee, for example. For Voltai, we essentially earn either from subscription or either from the number of swaps. So we need someone who will be able to take a look at this messy and the like being transparent, challenging space, right? Because again, Freddie Mercury, right? The bigger, the better in everything, and we have that mindset, right? We have that mindset that the bigger, the better. And if you're building from the edges and want to take advantage of the space, I think in terms of workforce or talent, the country that will be able to produce a lot of good quality of founders is going to take advantage of the space. So, like for example, there's a lot of like capital inflowing in Indonesia. I know there's a lot of like issues as well, but that's because there's a lot of entrepreneurial talent also in Indonesia, right? So I think that's going to be critical for someone who wants to take advantage of the centralized energy space.
Thank you very much, Epps. And then one very last question. How about all these geopolitical dynamics? How do you see it influencing? There is a rise in importance of critical minerals, regional energy autonomy. What should we do? So from a governmental perspective, do we invest on decentralized infrastructure, or we better stay safe, we maintain our central grids, which might be fossil heavy? How do you see that, and how it is influencing you as startups from venture builder perspective?
No, for me, so I know my presentation is about like decentralization of energy, and really like trying to build from the edges. But I'm not saying that centralized grid should be like should change everything, right? Like what I'm saying is it can be simultaneous, right? It can be simultaneous and we take advantage of the centralized grid at the same time the decentralized energy grid. And I think that's going to be key, right? Like the same way that you're diversifying your portfolio, it's going to be important, I think, for you to be able to, and that's the approach of our group, right? Like we're not totally like leaving thermal portfolio immediately, right? Because there's a lot of nuances there, and affordability is going to be, or energy affordability is going to be key for a developing country like the Philippines. And we understand that, right? We understand that there's no black and white answer to this. So for me, I think it's going to be a combination of those things, a combination of trying to make your centralized grid much more reliable, but at the same time trying to acknowledge that there's going to be a requirement for the decentralized energy to play in that space too, so that they'll be able to complement the gaps that we're seeing from a centralized grid perspective. So I'm not sure if that's like a straightforward answer, but I believe like in our view, as venture building, we need to be able to take advantage of both spaces because the things that are happening in centralized grid also impacts us, right? Like a very clear example of this, like once you have large amount of renewable energy system incoming to your grid, this variability needs to be combated, right? Like needs to be complemented. And you can complement this, or you can firm this capacity through large-scale batteries, for example, gas power plants. But we believe that decentralized energy systems, an orchestrated decentralized energy system, which we have seen work also in other countries, can complement this variability coming from the centralized grid. So it also helps us innovate, right? Because there's definitely gaps in the centralized grid. Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Epps. It was, as Grayson said in a comment, very enlightening, very comprehensive, very interesting what you are doing. And I believe there's much to learn from the other people in the Jimmy community, and also there's much to learn from you as well. So it was definitely a pleasure having you. Maybe just to be mindful of the timing, anything you'd like to share with the audience, any last word you'd like to say, related or unrelated to the decentralized energy?
So I think that the reason why like I said yes to this opportunity is really I really wanted to like get to know more about the community in the GV space, particularly those that are dabbling in the energy space. Because like for us, as you can see, our methodology, right? We're looking heavily on exemplars. We're looking at like how this startup work on other markets. So we're interested to know all of those things. On the same way, if you're interested to like explore this market, those are the insights that we can impart on you as well, right? We understand like who are the ecosystem players here. We understand like how is it structured right now, what are the challenges, what are the pain points. And I think like I don't have any like I don't have like any counter quote, for example, to Freddie Mercury, but like for me, it's like I just wanted to be connected to you guys. Feel free to message me in LinkedIn. And I'm really, really interested to get to know more about you, particularly if you're dabbling in some interesting energy startup or like an energy like an energy enabler, no, type of companies. So really interested to get to know more everyone in this community. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks again, Epps. It was definitely a pleasure. It's summer, so of course we will share the recording with our vaster community. Please, everyone, if you have any questions, any comments, if you'd like to get in contact with Epps, just reach out to us. We'll bridge that connection, and Epps will be in touch with you.
Yes, please. Yes,
We'll
yes.
keep this
Thank you so
going.
much.